The purpose of this conversation is really to focus on data and AI as a concept. We had a chat last year at Network X, Kanis, Rob, and I, talking about the ambition to try to do something together to kind of drive the industry forward on how we could use, in a meaningful way, data and create a platform or enable AI to be used at scale. And I have to thank Kanis in front of everybody here. You've been really passionate about making this happen, supporting the TIP community. So maybe I would give the first question actually to you. We launched this last year, this new initiative called Data and AI Foundation. AWS showed a number of highly interesting use cases, examples in Mobile World Congress this year. What's your take on where are we? How is the industry kind of taking this on?
First of all, thank you for the trust and thank you for the partnership. It took us almost 9 months to make the baby.
Yes.
But I loved the foundation formation process. Thanks to the entire board for pitching in. And over the course of the past 9 to 12 months, we've formed an architecture. It's agentic, and it's completely data-driven, and it does not depend on data being lifted from where it is. So the key premise, based on the 12-month discovery for I would say that's the holy grail of the foundation that we're building, that the data stays where it is, the model stays where it is, and everyone gets to benefit from that community effort. So that is the gist of it. When we started talking to folks and internally as well in AWS, the thinking was, how can you make it happen? It sounded like magic. But luckily, we were able to land on a technology, federated learning, and evolve it to a point where we are able to distribute it and not keep it centralized, although it was originally a centralized tech, and create hierarchies in a way that allows models to be trained where the data is and to be able to create a structured foundation that enables anything and everything that has to do with programmability of today's networks, all the way to dynamic compositions of future networks. And at MWC, and AWS does not do anything unless we are dead sure that, yes, we are able to make a real impact. And so we invested in implementing real assets. Those assets were demonstrated at the MWC in AWS demo booth. 2 technologies that we showcased. One was, of course, how would you build this model? And the model basically is not just one. The notion is network language models, and these are domain-specific models that are built using the multi-provider data in a way that the data stays where it is, but the model grows. Think of it as enabling a forest from a seed. So you start with small seeds, and those seeds grow into trees, and the tree grows into the forest. So we demonstrated how you would implement these NLMs with the most optimal price, performance, and accuracy. And then the other demonstration was solving yet another problem. A model is as good as data that contributes to the model. But we ran into a bit of a chicken and egg thing, where how do I get the data to train them? Because our approach for exposing the data or abstracting the data builds on a model. But then if the model is not there, how do I extract the data? And if data is not there, how do I build a model? So luckily, we had been working with NVIDIA, and I have to give them the credit for the technology, the Aerial Omniverse Digital Twin. It's a simulation technique. And we ended up designing a recursive data lifecycle building on that simulation technique. So basically starting with data that we would synthetically create, we would get started on building some baseline models, and then we basically iterate in a life cycle in a way that eventually from synthetic you go into lab data to field and then of course to operations. So those were the two demonstrations that we did at MWC. And the reception has been extremely well, Christian, to answer your question. Everyone that we speak to, it's basically a natural click. Yes, this is the problem I need to solve, and this seems like the most optimal way to solve it. So thank you to the board for giving us the opportunity. It's just a very, very strong start, I would say.
Yeah.
A long way to go, and I will look to the entire community to come and help us in this journey.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kanis. So that actually brings me back to the main, let's say, objective, which is really to make the life and operation more efficient, easier by the operator. So touching a little bit with my operator colleagues here. So starting with Bernard, you are one of the champions and actually co-chairing this group from your organization. Could you touch a little bit of what have you already achieved within your own reign, so to say, in using AI for network?
Yes, of course. So there are multiple angles to look at, but I'll touch on just a few.
Yep.
The first one, on the radio access, our apps are a great way to use AI and to easily implement use cases within the radio access network. And thanks again to the ORAN Alliance for creating the proper framework and interfaces. But that only touches on the RAN. And obviously, we are focused on delivering a good service for our customers. So you need to touch on the other domains. And so we've created another set of use cases for the other parts of the network, which obviously, you need to have obviously data first to be able to do that. One of the ones that we implemented first was the anomaly detection for the various network domains that we have. And it's been successful so far. And we have obviously the plan to extend this to fast root cause analysis and eventually with the proper safeguards, being able to push remedial actions into the network, but we're not there yet. One of the things that I find interesting is that we are using network observability to actually be able to model how our customers are perceiving the network. And we've trained a model by surveying like hundreds of thousands of customers. What's your experience on the network? How would you rate the network experience? And very simple answer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars. And now we're able to predict very accurately how our customers are perceiving their network performance. Obviously out of that, we're shifting the company to focus on making actions that are impactful to the customers rather than only focusing on KPIs. So I'll leave it at that.
But that perception is everything, and the customer perception is everything.
Yes.
Which I would jump to the other side of the room here to Prakash. As Prakash knows, I've been spending a lot of my career supporting and engaging also in India with the massive networks that you guys have over there. Could you tell a little bit, Jio being one of the leaders in many ways, not only in size of network, but also in automation, what have you already achieved in using AI for networks in your large footprint?
Perfect. Very good morning to everybody here. I know it's early, like Christian said. I barely made it, but anyways. Well, thank you, Christian, for this opportunity. One of the things that we've been blessed with as an operator is we're pretty young. We launched in 2016, so it gave us, an opportunity to kind of, build a network, differently, right? Versus folks networks and operators who've been around hundreds of years, where I myself come from the old Sprint days, right? So it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Because it's more like evolution, right?
Yes.
Because there are a lot of systems, tools, processes that have been well established, and it takes a while to kind of steer that ship in the right direction. So from day zero, I think our goal was to build not a network from the perspective of I'm going to offer connectivity, right? It was more of a digital mindset when we got into it, because the connectivity was a means to deliver digital services for India and the population of India. So day zero, we built in automation, right? Not what we are talking about today, not AI, agentic workflows and all those kind of things, right? But we do have a level of automation that we started off at day zero. But even launching in 2016, so we're getting close to 10 years of launch, right? It's still tough, right? I mean, because the way I look at it is, the goal, of course, is to achieve, what Bernard and Kaniz were talking about, right? The full holy grail of what TM Forum, defines as the fully automated agentic network. But before we get there, the way I look at it is, we still have to deal with 3 different layers, right? There are still processes and workflows that have to be redefined and changed. And I'm speaking specifically about network operations, right? From a network perspective. And then there is the whole people and the organizational shift, right? Because even in 2016, when we built the organization, it was still built on there's a planning, engineering, design, there's operations. It's the standard network terminology of what we do, and all those I think are at the cusp of being disrupted, right? Because when you can bring in automation across the workflows, I think the networks will really benefit. Especially coming from a country where the ARPUs are so low, in order to manage the EBITDA that the street expects us to, we have to get there,
Yeah.
right? And the final part, right, and I would say, the part that everyone is focused on is the whole tools and systems, right, and the evolution of that. And, we're working through that, right? And for us, we've already gone down the path of, building what I would call it as a big-ass data lake, right? We do have 500 million subscribers on the network today, right? So there's a lot of data, right? And now the data, like we all know, there's structured data, there's unstructured data, and hopefully we can get that data normalized, which can then be leveraged, right, in the right direction. So it's work in progress,
Yeah.
right? And we'll always look towards the communities like yourselves, to come out with the right frameworks that can be implemented. But the one thing I would like to kind of emphasize is that, and I think Rob brought this up yesterday in one of the conversations, right? So I don't think we should do anything specifically for telcos, right? I think it should be more, something, it should not be a specialized kind of, system or tool, right? Because we need to kind of take the path of, like we've talked about open, and we need to leverage scale, right?
Yes.
It should not be telco-centric. If not, we're going to get screwed, right, at the end of the day.
That is a good reflection. I will come back to that and some of the challenges, but also just good to remember when we talk about India and a network of Jio, 500 million customers.
Yes.
Just kind of put it into perspective. There's
Yes.
a lot of data in that.
Yes.
So
A lot of complexity.
yeah, a lot of complexity, and I've experienced it myself, and I'm always amazed that it works, and it works really well. Jumping a little bit back here, I'm coming, of course, talking through with everybody, but Ahmed, you are a bit of a special character here because you represent both an operator, Rakuten Mobile, as well as an organization that is offering some of your learnings and solutions to the broader industry, Rakuten Symphony. Could you talk a little bit about how far you feel Rakuten Mobile has come? And in a way, how do you, as you now talk to lots of other operators, how do you see the reception of those ideas when you talk about actually also trying to do business, obviously, with those solutions?
I think when it comes to AI, there are areas where I would say we're mature in a specific use cases. but I wouldn't say we're uniformly mature. And I think most of the industry is also not yet mature uniformly in AI. We are past the experimental phase. Experimental phase, in my opinion, is the most expensive phase of the deployment of AI, because when teams are excited, they're as excited as when I first get my first cloud account, like $100, $200, spend more and more. But the use case output is not there yet. But once you pass the experimental phase, you start to be more focused on the use case and the cost to achieve these use cases. We have worked mostly at the beginning on the operational use cases, because this is, like Bernard was mentioning, these are the use cases we are really focusing on to solve the pain of the day one and the day two part. So we focus on energy saving use cases. We focus on operational assurance and also recovery from incidents use cases and incident predictive maintenance.
Okay.
So these were areas where we focused. But during handling these parts, once you go actually to production, you figure out that there is a large dilemma that needs to be solved over time through this forum and through all the industry.
Yes.
That you have different parts interacting with the network. As Prakash mentioned, we have different services and different phases of the network. You have the build, the orchestrate, operate, optimize, and you also have different domains, RAN, core, transport, you name it.
Yep.
And all these parts, they might not seem to be talking to each other all the time, but we've seen it previously more and more. They actually impact each other at some point.
Yeah.
So when we have in RAM, for example, we have the automations running on the networks. We have the RIG platform talking to the application talking to the network. We have the agentic framework now going on. And very soon we have the RAN AI in 6G coming on. So there need to be a layer which hive mind that. And in my opinion, what we're working toward is a policy management layer where it orchestrates every command and every configuration change that happen in the network. But again, this is not something that is uniformly organized in a format. And this is where I think such forum can help in a similar manner that in the Open RAN, we have the open interfaces and we have the framework.
Yeah.
This is something that can be replicated. If we can run AI in a repetitive manner, then we've reached a very good stage.
Interesting. Yeah, there's, from what you say, there's a lot of opportunity for us to come together as a community and solve some of these aspects in a way that benefit everybody. Rob, coming back to you and your organization, AT&T now, as an example, and I think Igal mentioned a number of 700,000 AI-driven initiatives, or rather actions being taken. I can't remember if it was per day or per month or per week or whatever, but where do you see now the use cases where you, as responsible for a big portion of the network, but looking at it holistically, what's the big bet in terms of use cases that you would go for or are going for?
So it is 700,000 per day.
Yeah, I thought that was.
So it is an impressive number.
Yep.
I think what we are seeing right now is that in order to scale that to 7 million or whatever we need, specifically across the entire network, and those are largely 700,000 RAN-related changes,
Yeah.
We want to move towards a space where it's truly end-to-end. We are learning a lot from our colleagues here who are benefiting from new build.
Yeah.
Bernard replaced a Huawei network with a Samsung network, and it's effectively a new network, I think.
Yes.
And Rakuten is a brand new greenfield network. Jio, we heard, is a young network.
Yes.
We're a 150-year-old network, sorry. But at the same time, what does that mean? The power for us of using AI and automation is that we can consume new, open and disaggregated assets while also protecting legacy and creating that interaction and absorbing that complexity, because we cannot grow our operational teams. In the meantime, we also face the challenge that as teams age out and retire, or vendors, unfortunately, in this business disappear, the gear and the knowledge base that's associated with that is going to have to be replaced to some degree by automated knowledge and artificial intelligence. So this is the exciting thing for me, is that we can actually bridge the old with the new. So from my perspective, We are actively today building foundational models. We use a slightly different term in AT&T than they do in AWS, so we call them network foundational models, but I think they're the same thing. For those of you who are not familiar, I know probably a lot of you are familiar with LLMs, and those are language in and language out. A network foundational model or network language model, as described by Kaniz, is numbers in, numbers out. So the opportunity for creating automation fronts in the network is really about being able to consume all of the data in its form, in its raw form, in that case numbers, and being able to look for patterns, look for an ability to correlate that ultimately gives us things like root cause analysis. So we go aggressively now at fault found, and we launched a new platform, totally agentic based, that allows us now to help our customer care colleagues troubleshoot and debug issues that are in the field and identify, okay, when you lost a call or a group of people call and complain about a lost call in an area, did we have an outage in that area? Did we have incorrect parameter settings? Did we have something that was going on in the network that either is auto-correcting or an action needs to be taken? And this just launched a couple of weeks ago. We're also using our foundational model now very specifically to drive the behavior on things like outage compensation. So as we migrate from one base of assets to another and we take down cell sites, we need to immediately compensate for the fact that that site is no longer in service. So we use artificial intelligence in the foundation model to literally compensate for that and to protect against it. We're using today very actively it for energy savings, and we see around pre and post around 20 to 30% improvement in how much energy we're consuming in what is the hog of our network. And that's the thing. I mean, I think the biggest thing is everyone wants to go to some mythical view of level 4 across the end because they want to, get a gold stamp from TM Forum or something. But for us, what really matters, I think, is we continuously look for the things that generate the highest business value, the things that help us. So speed the process of migration towards new assets, reduce our energy consumption, directly impact the user experience. In the meantime, also look for those opportunities to absorb that complexity in a code word for can we do more with less? Can we? Yeah. So those are the things we look for.
Oh, fantastic. And you said many important things, but one thing also keep in mind, you follow the press and discussion about AI, and there's a lot of concern. Will it eat up our work and job opportunities? I think we have slightly a different situation in our industry. We need it to actually being able to manage the complexity with I would say, a dwindling workforce or a talent base that is not necessarily growing for many reasons, many of the reasons you just mentioned. Kaniz, coming back to one of the things we discussed last year, and you touched upon it obviously, the importance of data. And we all know this is a sensitive topic, and you demonstrated in Mobile World Congress. We've talked about it in our TIP community. We are working towards how to do this without breaching those very sensitive borders. Anything you would want to add on, in terms of the techniques and what you also see in AWS from other industries going down the same route, to Prakash's point?
Yeah, so thank you for bringing up the point that we shall not be creating new tools for telco and try to use the tools which are available to the general purpose needs of all the industries. And that was the notion that we started to build on when we went on this path with Christian and team. One of the problems, or I would say the anchor problem that we started to solve with this initiative was how do I make different vendor interfaces speak the same language? So when you start looking at data hidden in the network, most of the data, I have to tell you, operators are data rich, but unfortunately intelligence poor. Because, sorry to say that, because it's not that they don't want to do it, it's just that the data is hidden inside the black boxes that they buy from the vendors. Thanks to Christian and the work that we have done in TIP under the auspices of Open RAN certification, we've taken the industry long ways into opening up those black boxes. But the last remaining hurdle was, how do I scale? How does TIP scale Open RAN beyond the lab-specific implementations or certifications that we were stuck with? And we said that we are sitting inside TIP. We are aiming big for the industry on this, creating the data and AI foundations. Why don't we anchor the work on a problem that helps to elevate TIP or unblock the key hurdle, which is basically scaling Open RAN? And the path we took was not to go create a mega big ass data lake. We decided to use the techniques that were being tested and implemented in my industry, the cloud industry, last year. MCP, now everyone is familiar with it, what an MCP does. So that was the very first thought that came to our mind. And I'm going to walk you through the thought process as to how we arrived at the technique. So the very first thought was, okay, let's put an MCP server in front of all the vendor black interfaces, and that should be able to solve the problem, but it does not, because it just takes that same problem and into just the agentification of that interface. The real problem of the n-squared integration remains there, because you still have n number of tools to be integrated, and these tools are like orchestrators and controllers and whatnot that we would build, for example, in ORAN, the RICs, and the R1 and all the other interfaces, integrating them with the number of vendors that are running in AT&T or TELUS network. So we went down the path of completely distributing the abstraction to the point that you are creating models which are abstracting these interfaces. So the network language model, basically, yes, it is data in, data out, numbers in, numbers out, but it is much more than that. So the ambition is, and we've started to walk through that ambition and executing on it, is to be able to create the language of a network. And it's not just one network. Each of my esteemed colleagues here, they're operating multiple networks within their network. And each of those networks it speaks multiple languages, and these languages are the languages of the black boxes sitting inside those networks. And what would be the ideal situation would be that rather than asking each vendor to implement one language, why don't we learn from these multiple languages? So the NLM basically is model-driven abstraction, so that you are creating a language of a network that every element in the network is able to contribute to and comprehend. So that basically is the technique. NLMs basically seed the agentic framework that helps to agentify the network, and the networks become a part of the broader AI fabric. And I'm not going to get into the fabrics now, because that is taking me into my favorite topic on LEO and satellite and 6G.
That's for the next session.
So that's for the next session. Yeah, I'm going to stop it here.
Thank you, Kanis. We don't have much time, but I wanted to touch upon something that actually Prakash brought up in his initial reflection. I will start with Bernard here. We talk about models and networks and data, hardcore topics, but all of this is actually something that organizations and people deal with. And I know, Bernard, from talking to you, that you've done some changes in TELUS to support the work towards implementing AI at scale. And let's touch a little bit about the culture and organizational aspects. Could you reflect on that?
Yes. From our point of view, we want to have some sort of balance between people actually implementing new ideas, innovating, but at the same time, it needs to be somewhat federated, because otherwise it's going to be a free-for-all. in terms of the proliferation of use cases, and potentially, and we've seen many in our case, duplication of work from different teams that didn't know what happened. So the way we dealt with this is a little while back, we created a centralized team within the CTO organization that is really focused on data engineering and operations, as well as a federated model for AI. So what I mean by federated model is making sure that there is visibility into what people are working on so that we avoid duplications, implementing best practices in terms of tools, in terms of security, and all of the other aspects that pertain to building AI use cases, and also managing the costs that are related to implementing such use cases.
Yeah.
And like for an operator our size, it's not easy, but I can only imagine like the gigantic networks that some of my colleagues here are managing. It must be also quite a challenge to bring. It's like herding cats a little bit.
Yeah.
You're trying to really bring a little bit of order, but at the same time, like I said, making sure that there is balance so that people can continue to innovate and implement great ideas. People are so motivated with AI use cases. The technical staff is like, there is no need to try to push them in a particular direction. You just need to steer them a little bit. You go a little bit more to the left, go a little bit more to the right. But they are so keen on using AI and building use cases that the motivation is there. We just need to have proper order within an organization.
Fantastic. And knowing you, Bernard, I'm sure you can herd these cats in a very gentle, nice way. How do you do that in Jio, in this gigantic, on the subcontinent, across all the regions?
So it's a different kind of problem, right? I mean, the organization is, I would say, getting itself trained for AI right now.
Yeah.
So there's a mandate that every employee understands, just even using, LLMs, right?
Yes.
So we are going through that phase right now where everybody is, learning, understanding, and, grasping the power of AI within the different domains that we have, right? Now, specifically on the care side, right? Because we cannot afford to have, given the scale of customers that we have, we can't have call center agents attending every call. Also given the ARPUs, right? If somebody is paying $2.50 a month, right? I can't have 10 call center agents serving them. So there we have taken an automated approach, pretty much where it's all self-care for majority of the customers. And we have introduced, AI into that realm, right? So we try to solve at least 75 to 80% of those problems via AI, because majority are either billing questions, plans, things like those, which are very easily solvable without having a, physical person talking to the end customer. So, like I said, for us, it's a journey, right? And we have to get people trained before we implement anything, because what we don't want people getting scared of is that, AI is going to take up jobs, right? So we have the reverse problem in India, right? It's a very young population.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people out there, looking for jobs, and telecommunications is one of those job generation engines for India. So the main thing is training, and also making people aware of, the training also goes through security, right? What to provide as inputs, and what to take as outputs, right? So, we don't want people uploading, sensitive data and stuff like that, right? So there's a whole process that's underway right now from a workforce perspective on getting people trained on AI, right? So yeah, it's a step-by-step process, right? But the main focus is on the care side, right? Where we would like to push more and more towards, the automated care, and, take the human out of the loop as far as possible.
Absolutely. Ahmed, you are, in your role in Symphony and even in your title, you're responsible for transformation, and this is definitely transformation. What are your insights now when you've been talking to people also outside of Rakuten Mobile? How's the industry?
So I think from an industry point of view, from a business perspective, we all have the challenges and the push toward that. So there is there is a readiness from a business perspective. And there is also from a technology perspective, as my colleagues were saying, there is a readiness from a technology perspective. The AI stack, the open community, all the available chatbots and AI agents available that are running in the networks. But from an operational readiness, this is where I see from the customers we're talking to that there is a little bit of, I wouldn't say a hesitation, but there is a little bit of like a slowdown. Everybody's very excited about AI, as Bernard said, but they're always worried, like the eagle said, after the thrill is gone, what is coming next? Like what if that hype slows down? Where am I gonna find myself? Am I gonna find myself spend so much money and achieving little use cases? So part of what we do is that we try to mimic the experience we did in Japan, but in some time tailor it to the customers we are working with. Because the most beneficial way to rally an organization behind you is finding a use case that provide you both the business benefits, and in a similar time, it shows you that these things work. And in that case, we try to go in 3 different ways. The first way is things to operate better. This is the first type of use cases, and it depends on every organization and their pain point. Sometimes this is not your pain point. You're operating well, like Rob mentioned. There are organizations that have been running into the market for so long time, and they've optimized the network down to the T. But there are other parts where you actually go and grow faster. And there's a third part where you monetize. Depending on the use cases, you can find the best use cases and rally the organization behind, put workflows for guardrails in place. And this is how you get the teams to kind of like open up to AI and be excited about it more.
Fantastic. I think we are coming close to the end of time. First of all, I want to thank everybody. This has been an illustrious panel, and I think we could speak for another hour and dive deeper to a number of topics. We do have time for 1 or 2 questions. If anybody in the audience have something they want to ask from the, otherwise we can do it with the coffee afterwards. People will be outside. Either it's too early for questions or the panel was so good that all the questions were answered before they were posed. But I would like to thank very much all of you, and I have the pleasure of working with you in various combinations and setups, and I think I'm very excited from what we hear. We are in the beginning of a journey that will transform the industry. There are topics that we do need to tackle together, but of course there are topics that are competitive, very specific for each of your companies or organizations. And I hope that the community of TIP, which all of you are invited to join if you are not members yet, can be at least solving some of the common problems that will then make the specific implementations easier for all of you. With that said, thank you everybody and have a great day in the conference. It's great to be here.